In a stunning and unanimous 9-0 decision, the Supreme Court has just delivered one of the biggest victories for the Second Amendment in decades. This wasn't a narrow ruling. This wasn't a partisan split. All 9 justices, every single one, agreed that the government had overstepped its constitutional boundaries. What exactly did the court decide? And how does this change the rights of every gun owner across America? Stay with me, because this decision could reshape the future of firearm laws nationwide. And if you care about your constitutional freedoms, you need to understand what just happened. This is historic, this is urgent, and this affects you. This case began when a group of law-abiding citizens challenged a federal law that placed sweeping restrictions on how firearms could be carried, registered, and transferred. For years, gun owners across the country felt these regulations went far beyond what the Constitution allows. They weren't criminals. They were everyday Americans, fathers, mothers, hunters, veterans, who believed their rights were being quietly stripped away by federal overreach. The case worked its way through lower courts, with mixed rulings and confusion spreading from state to state. Finally, it reached the highest court in the land. Millions of Americans waited, holding their breath, to see if the Supreme Court would side with freedom or bow to political pressure and allow more regulation. The stakes couldn't have been higher. And then came the answer. All 9 justices agreed that the government had gone too far. The court reaffirmed in clear and unmistakable terms that owning and carrying firearms is a core constitutional right, not a privilege the government can strip away whenever it feels like it. The ruling blocks federal agencies from enforcing certain overreaching regulations that violate the plain text and historical understanding of the Second Amendment. In simple terms, the court said, the Constitution means what it says, and no agency, no matter how powerful, can rewrite it. This decision doesn't chip away at the edges. It strikes at the heart of federal gun control efforts that have been creeping forward for years, and it does so with the full, unified force of the Supreme Court. Now, let's talk about why this 9-0 vote is so significant. This wasn't a split 5-4 decision where conservatives barely edged out a win. It was 9-0, meaning liberal justices and conservative justices stood together side by side in complete agreement. When was the last time you saw that happen on a major constitutional issue? Almost never. When all 9 justices agree, it means something historic has just happened. It means the legal reasoning was so strong, so grounded in the Constitution that there was no room for disagreement. This ruling sends a powerful signal to lower courts, to lawmakers, and to federal agencies. You cannot ignore the Second Amendment. You cannot twist it to fit your agenda. The Constitution is not up for debate. So, what does this mean for gun owners across America? It means you just gained powerful legal protection. This ruling could permanently block several restrictive state laws that conflict with federal protections under the Constitution. If you're a hunter in the Midwest, a homeowner protecting your family in the suburbs, or a veteran who values the freedoms you fought for, this decision strengthens your rights. It creates a legal shield that future courts will have to respect. Gun control advocates have spent years trying to chip away at the Second Amendment through incremental regulations, red tape, and bureaucratic delays. This ruling stops that momentum cold. It tells every American that your right to bear arms is not something the government can hand out or take away at will. It's a fundamental freedom. But this decision doesn't just empower citizens. It also limits what federal agencies like the ATF can do moving forward. For years, these agencies have issued rules and regulations that many argued stretched far beyond their legal authority. This ruling puts them on notice. Future regulations will face strict constitutional review, and any attempt to infringe on Second Amendment rights will be struck down. The balance of power just shifted. The court just sent a clear message to the executive branch and to federal bureaucrats. The Constitution still rules, and you answer to it, not the other way around. This isn't about politics. It's about the rule of law. And today, the rule of law won. Unsurprisingly, the reaction has been swift and divided. Gun rights supporters are calling it a major win for freedom and a long overdue pushback against government overreach. Social media exploded with hashtags like 2A Victory and Constitution Wins. Prominent Second Amendment advocates praised the court for its courage and clarity. On the other hand, critics warn that this decision could make enforcement of existing gun laws more difficult and may lead to challenges against regulations they believe are necessary for public safety. Some lawmakers have already vowed to explore legislative workarounds, though legal experts say this ruling will make that extremely difficult. The debate is fierce, but one thing is undeniable. This decision has changed the conversation. The momentum has shifted, and it's shifting in favor of constitutional rights. Legal scholars and constitutional experts are weighing in, and many are calling this one of the most significant Second Amendment rulings in modern history. One prominent law professor said this case could redefine how the Second Amendment is interpreted for the next generation. Another expert compared it to the landmark 2008 Heller decision, which affirmed an individual's right to keep and bear arms, and the 2022 Bruin decision, which expanded concealed carry rights. But this ruling goes even further in some respects because of its unanimity and its sweeping rejection of federal overreach. Experts predict that lower courts will now be forced to apply strict scrutiny to gun laws, making it much harder for state and federal governments to justify restrictions. In other words, the legal landscape just changed permanently. So what does this mean in practical, everyday terms? For millions of Americans, this means fewer gray areas around firearm ownership. It means clearer protections when you purchase, carry, or store a firearm. It means state licensing systems that conflict with this ruling could be challenged and overturned. Expect changes in local enforcement, in how police and sheriffs apply gun laws, and in future gun control proposals at both the state and federal level. States like California, New York, and Illinois, which have some of the strictest gun laws in the nation, are now facing serious legal challenges to their existing frameworks. Gun owners in those states may soon see real relief, and for Americans in more Second Amendment-friendly states, this ruling reinforces the protections they already enjoy and ensures they won't be eroded by future federal action. This decision will ripple through lower courts and future cases for years to come. We could see dozens, maybe even hundreds of lawsuits now using this 9-0 ruling as precedent. Every restrictive gun law in the country is now vulnerable to constitutional challenge. Will Congress respond with new legislation, or will states push back, trying to find loopholes or workarounds? One thing is certain: the Supreme Court has drawn a line in the sand, and that line is the Constitution. Future justices, future administrations, and future lawmakers will all have to reckon with what happened today. And for those who believe in limited government and individual liberty, that's a very good thing. In short, the Supreme Court just sent a thunderous reminder that the Second Amendment is not up for debate. 9 justices across the ideological spectrum stood together and said, the right to keep and bear arms is fundamental. It is protected, and it will not be infringed. This wasn't just a legal ruling. It was a message to every American about freedom, about the rule of law, and about the enduring power of the Constitution. Whether you own a gun or not, whether you agree with this decision or not, you cannot deny its significance. This is history in the making, and it's a victory not just for gun owners, but for anyone who believes that our rights are not granted by the government. They are guaranteed by the Constitution. If you support this decision and the protection of your constitutional rights, hit that like button right now and share this video with everyone you know. This is the kind of news that doesn't always make it to the mainstream, so let's make sure people hear about it. Drop a comment below and tell me what this ruling means to you, freedom or controversy. I want to hear your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we're covering every major update as this story develops. There's more to come, and you don't want to miss it. If you're still with me, let's go a little deeper. This ruling builds on a long line of Second Amendment victories, including the 2008 Heller decision, which recognized the individual right to own a firearm, and the 2022 Bruin decision, which struck down New York's restrictive concealed carry law. Each of these cases laid the groundwork for today's ruling, and together they form a powerful legal shield for gun owners. But here's what's interesting. Mainstream media outlets have been surprisingly quiet about this decision, or they've framed it in ways that downplay its significance. Why? Because it doesn't fit the narrative they've been pushing for years. They want you to believe that more regulation is always the answer, that the Second Amendment is outdated, and that ordinary citizens can't be trusted with firearms. But the Supreme Court just said otherwise, unanimously. And no matter where you stand on this issue, you have to respect the fact that the highest court in the land looked at the Constitution, looked at the law, and made a decision based on principle, not politics. No matter where you stand, today's 9-0 decision reminds us that rights only matter if we defend them. Stay informed, stay engaged, and never take your freedoms for granted.